Well, today I'm thrilled to welcome David Faugno, President and COO of 1Password. David's career is nothing short of remarkable, but with a foundation in accounting from Rutgers, an MBA from Duke, he served in incredible and pivotal roles like the CFO at Barracuda Networks, an EVP at Qualtrics, and currently he's steering the ship at 1Password while he's also a venture partner at Accel. He's also a board member and investor for companies like SentinelOne, BrowserStack, and Meltwater. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
It's great to have you. So since you run a password company, do you have a favorite password?
So the password the unbreakable password we use as an example is often in discussion is Fluffy Cat 123. So yeah, that's the one we use very often as an example of a very robust, or maybe not so robust, password that some people
Okay.
might use.
I think I need to share that one with my wife. She loves to make the worst passwords.
Yeah, I suggest not using that one, actually. She should probably get a password manager and have a very
Yep.
strong, unique password.
Yeah. So our family uses one password actually, and I think the hardest part I find with using a one password is adherence and helping ensure that she actually uses it. But anyway, that's just our family problem. I don't know if we can talk more about that. But
Sure.
one question I wanted to just jump into was actually something really cool that I found on your LinkedIn, which was where you shared an experience when you brought your daughter to meet President Obama at a Qualtrics conference. I've got 4 kids, 2 daughters. What was it like to bring your daughter to work on that day? And how did it feel like for you to be like, were you a cool dad that day? Was she excited?
Yeah, no, it was really cool. I was a CFO at Qualtrics at the time. We had just started, I think it might have been our second or third big user conference, and they got very big. Like every year was bigger and bigger than the next or the last, sorry. Put a lot of emphasis into it. So, kudos to Ryan Smith, the founder CEO at Qualtrics, for getting, speakers like President Obama to come and participate. And look, I'm super proud of all my kids. They all find their own path and what's important to them and passionate to them. But fortunate in my scenario that my kids have do have their passions and they go after it. My daughter Francesca, who's the subject of that post and that day, she's always been motivated by making the world a better place, and understanding kind of sort of the way that uh, the political environment can support that kind of stuff. And so she's been a big fan of President Obama since, she was a littler person. And so that opportunity to go join us at the conference, see President Obama speak, meet with him, was really important to her. And, it kind of showed her a little bit about what the corporate side of the world could be. And she's now in law school. She's third year at law school. She's at NYU in New York. She's now understands that all the different parts of the way the world works are interconnected. And so whether it's politics or business or the intersection of that, you can still have a passion for improving the world, and do it from it, sort of any sort of perch that makes sense, and including the corporate world. It was a great experience for her on a lot of levels. It was a great experience for me just to be part of that journey for her. And we sometimes even talk about it, and it brings a smile to her face, which brings a smile to mine. So it's good stuff.
Awesome. So you, like from your background, you've worked in finance and basically at an executive level a few times. I've been a CEO now for 4 years, and I've been around some great executives at like Facebook and other companies, and it just seems like obviously there are great parts, and then there are some tough parts, right? And it seems like particularly helping run a company maybe at your level could be pretty tough. So I guess like why do you continue to do it? What's driving you? What excites you about it? Like what's the main thing?
Yeah, I sometimes I joke, I'm good at some things, I'm not so good at other things. I'm not very good at retiring. I tried it a couple times, didn't work out all that well. So again, I'm back grinding. Hey, so I asked a similar question of a person that is a very accomplished executive, that later in his life went back, jumped into an operating role again, and this was maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. He was a board member of a company that I was working at, and I asked him sort of like, why are you doing it? Like, why are you jumping back in? Well, obviously it wasn't for the money or anything else. And he said something that stuck with me. It relates a little bit to the first question that you asked. He said, I want my kids to see me grinding. And it like really like resonated with me, like, hell yeah, like that's really, really important. And I think about how my father lived his life and sort of like the ethics of working hard for what you earn and being committed and sticking through things. And so I kind of feel the same way at a certain level that like I want to be the right example for my kids that I embrace the grind. And then at the end of the day, I love the grind. Like I actually really enjoy being in the mix. I enjoy the work content. I use the analogy sometimes as like it's from a football analogy, it's the difference between, if you're an advisor or in a board seat or you're an operator, it's the difference between being in the booth with the headset on or being on the field making a block that springs the player for the touchdown run. And you can't compare the experience or the fulfillment that you get when you're actually part of making it happen versus sort of a little bit of the rumble seat. So I enjoy being part of the team. I enjoy the grind of getting it done. I enjoy the work content if you put yourself in the right place. But most important is really around the people. So like if you're working with people that you respect, that see the world the same way, that you have a good relationship with, then the hardest amount of work that you can do can still be really fun, can still be really rewarding. And similarly, you could be in a great situation with people that aren't the right people, and it's not a good experience. So for me, if I can continue to grind, be a good role model for my kids, be a good example for others, enjoy the quality and the nature of the work, and then most significantly enjoy the people that I'm doing it with, then life is good. So that's where I wound up finding myself.
I love that answer. My anytime so like I'm like you're thinking about like your kids and the generations ahead of you, like them seeing you. And I was a pitcher growing up. I played baseball all through high school, and my dad would come to my baseball games, and he'd be in left field in his full pinstripe suit with like his earpiece in on calls, like watching, and I could see he's here, he cares about me, but he's still grinding. And I think about that all the time. I'm like, what are my kids going to think about me? Are they going to be like, he's the guy working at home remotely, or what is it? And so I think that's a really important thing to consider. So how about like you're looking back. I mean, you still have a lot ahead of you, right? But like looking backwards now, from CFO, EVP, finance guy, even back to your MBA, like you've probably learned a lot and had these perspectives that have changed. Are there things where you're like, man, I was completely wrong at the beginning of my career versus now where you're like, okay, I think I finally figured it out?
Well, I mean, I think I certainly learned lessons along the way. Mentors played a big role in that, and helping me benefit from the experiences that they've had. One of the early career realizations that I had was because I did start out in a sort of finance track. I went to Rutgers and got an undergrad degree in accounting. Almost all of my classmates were going into public accounting firms to sort of go the CPA route. And I didn't want to do that coming out of college because I had a desire to be a little bit more of a broad business person versus a financial, specialist. But leveraging that lens, so I had a gut that sort of there was a breadth to what I could learn and bring to the table that was rooted in the financial discipline and my education and my experience that I was going to get in that discipline, but had an impact that was broader. And so I didn't go into public accounting. I went to work for AT&T, which was at the time the largest company in the world, and I was in a financial development program which had rotated you through a bunch of different functional areas within finance, and had exposure to mentors and executives. And I wound up having somebody that I really respected and trusted gave me some advice early on because they sort of saw my desire to be broad, and it was advice that I've taken to heart, and I pay it forward a lot when people come to me and ask for advice. It's a story that I tell. And basically, to sum up the advice or make it sort of TLDR on it is, if you have an idea what you want to be, sort of, you need to get enough of your experiences in life in the column that would lead to that. So in case of want to be a CFO someday, there's accounting and treasury and planning and a bunch of stops along the way you have to get exposure to in order to be able to do the job. but you should sort of think about your career as 70% of the material in that channel and 30% in adjacent areas where you can get different perspective, make you better. And this was controversial advice at the time. This ecosystem of people who were supposed to be advisors and mentors to the class of rotational folks. It was, you run through the program, you do the 3 rotations, you get this job, you get that job. 10 years, you get to be a district manager. What else could you want? And the other advice was like, hey, you got to plot your own course. Like if you think about this balanced perspective thing, there's no prescription to it. You figure it out. And so I went and quit this program. I went out and took a sales job at AT&T. It was, they didn't care what program I came from. If I didn't make quota two quarters in a row, I was fired. It was not only not in the program, I wasn't in the company. And I did it because I wanted to understand like the customer perspective, so that when I was in a meeting, like it wasn't just spreadsheets, it actually made sense in some context. And that led to so much open doors for me, because when I went back, after a couple of years of figuring it out and being successful in sales, I got back into the finance track and different kinds of jobs there. And just my perspective on what really happens when a customer gets a bill that's messed up, or the metering, pricing model didn't work for a certain market segment. Like I still had real world context for what was being discussed in meetings and shown on spreadsheets. And it really, sort of accelerated what I was able to do in the finance world. And then I continued to find opportunities to be broad and find other experiences. And so, that's one of the things that I've sort of built my career on, that basis, and really trying to be as broad and see the business from as many different angles, while not doing it at the sake of having the requisite experiences to be sort of what I wanted to be. And, so it was an instrumental, mentorship opportunity that I had when I was younger. And again, when I get folks that reach out to me for help, it's one of the things I talk about, depending on the situation. But one of the most critical parts of that, or the mentorship, and I'll say it here since we're saying it on video, I was asked at the end of that is like, hey, the only thing I ask for you in return, is thank you so much for your advice and your experience, is that when somebody asks you for help, you do the same. And so whether it's one of my daughter's friends or someone that's working with me, or there's some person that I have some relationship with that asks me for advice, I always end it with, what I'm asking of you is that you pay it forward when your time comes, when people are asking you that. So anybody who takes any of that seriously or internalizes it via this video, that's the request of you as well. So
that is beautiful. Okay, I actually really like that, because I think it's a sort of assumed, but you often hear, particularly in certain industries, that people are willing to share and give advice. And then in other industries, they're kind of surprised when that advice is actually like shared and disseminated. So that's actually pretty cool. Good way to like just push it forward. I love it.
yeah.
Okay, so you've taken all these different roles that have sort of gotten you to a point where like you can see sales, you can see finance, you can see operations, product, et cetera. And so you're now running the company as president. And in some ways, you probably joined this company and you had some ideas of like what you would probably do right away, or you had some ideas of like what you think you might do right away. So I was kind of curious, like when you joined 1Password, for example, like how did you think about the first 90 days? And just to kind of give you some context for this question, I talked to Nick Mehta last week. He's the CEO of Gainsight, and he said that the 3 things he really likes to do is show up and do something for the team, do something for the board, and do something for customers. And I thought like that was really profound, but I assume everybody kind of plays this differently. So just curious, like how do you think about it?
Yeah, I think when I try to start something new, and even if it's inside of something I'm already sort of doing, to me the most important thing is, first and foremost, is learning. All right, and I think there's a lot of times people will come in and say, look, I've got my playbook, boom, slap it down and let the dust settle wherever it goes. I don't personally think that's the right way to start. I think the first thing to do is really understand, is there a method to any of what appears to be madness here? Why are the way that things done? So in some cases, it's done because it was done for a different time, or it was not thought through. In some cases, there's a little secret magic in there that's actually allowed the company to hit a vein someplace. And very much prevalent in founder-led companies, which my career has largely been based on, joining founder-led, businesses, that figured out something pretty unique and helping that business to scale. And so if you come in and you try to wipe out everything that actually got them to where they've gotten to, because your playbook says that everything has to be done a certain way, then I think, that's not the right formula for those kinds of environments. And so, understanding sort of why the decisions that have been made and where they're working and where they're not. That's sort of the first thing to learn. The second, thing to learn is like learn who the people are. What's driving them? Where is there good matches? Where is there mismatches? Where are people not being fully, leveraged for what their potential is? Things like that. And then the next thing to understand is like, what does the business want to be when it grows up? So really, I put a lot of emphasis on the long range. Like, what are we trying to accomplish here? You put in any number of years on it, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I don't know. There's an exercise to think about what are we trying to accomplish ultimately, and then what's the path from where we are to where we're trying to go? And is that clear? Is everybody on the same page? Do we understand that collectively? There are different opinions that have to be reconciled. Can we start to identify the choice points and the decision points on what we could be and what the right path to get there is? And how do we create a system and optionality? And so once you start sort of like learning and understanding and then I think you're in a position to then clarify, communicate, align, prioritize, set metrics, set benchmarks to execute to the tactical plan that marries up to that vision, with the benefit of understanding what makes you special and the benefit of understanding what the team's strengths and weaknesses are. And so to me, that's what the first part of any of these gigs is really trying to get my hands around all of that and then leverage it to build some value.
Amazing. Okay. I particularly like the idea of not screwing up what the founder has done, or at least like observing it before you do. That seems pretty insightful. For you guys, specifically at 1Password, from what I understand, it's a pretty substantial, big remote company, and maybe parts of it parts of it are. Maybe you can clarify for me. But what's that been like, going and working for an entirely remote company, trying to figure out how to communicate? Has that been a challenge? Are you excited about it? Are there times where it's tough? Like, love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I guess pre-pandemic, when I worked for Qualtrics in Provo, Utah, where you went to school, I was commuting from California. So it wasn't a remote company. I had a little home office for the one day every 2 weeks that I wasn't staying at the Provo Marriott. But there was not really a remote company, and many companies were like that. In the pandemic era, a lot of companies went fully remote, and then some rotated back, and some rotated partly back, and some didn't. But common to all of those pandemic era companies, they weren't built to be remote, and so a lot of them hit a lot of the potential pitfalls of that environment. So a company like 1Password was built originally as a remote company. They always operated that way. There are a number of companies that have that same profile. And so the company was only able to scale successfully because they built a system to be able to attract and retain and manage their people asset in a way that was true to that form of work. And it requires a tremendous amount of overhead around communication specifically, and really consistency of messaging. So you have to very much make the messaging clear about what the priorities are. You have to very consistently communicate it. You have to hit people in the way that they are most likely to receive it. Right? So you can go and say, "Oh, we did it. We said that in the all hands." Well, not everybody dialed all hands and paid attention to everything. And by the way, you got to say it in every all hands, and you got to say it 3 different ways. And you got to make sure all the other forms of communication. And you have to really think about making sure and stress testing that each of the layers of management are staying aligned and connected on the same page. Because what you can get is people not like going in different directions, thinking that, oh, what we're trying to accomplish is this. Well, another team thinks it's this. It's much easier to reconcile those differences and spot them when you're sitting in the same room in meetings, or when you're in the hallway conversations that in person provides you benefit. Some of those disconnects are harder to pick up, especially when you have thousands of people and they're all in different spots. So really an emphasis on communication, consistency, approach, the methods, the channels of communication. And then you also have to get out and meet people. Like you can't have a remote company and just assume that, hey, 3 years from now, me and Scott will shake hands. We talk on Zoom, 3 times a week, but never heard him. So like whether it's staff, meetings for a particular organization, or events or other opportunities for people to move around a bit and meet, we emphasize that quite a bit. And so all the savings that you get in real estate sometimes gets compensated for the fact that you want people to actually meet each other in person a little bit, and you have these a handful of offsites that are in different groups or larger groups or what have you. So a lot of overhead, you get a lot of benefit out of it, but you have to manage the downside. Otherwise, you can have a lot of inefficiency and lack of productivity, and most significantly, lack of alignment. So.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. I think I've heard from many executives this idea of like, sharing the same message over and over and over and over, and basically doing it until either they are no longer in leadership or the company ceases to exist. Seems kind of like a big focus.
Yeah.
So I mentioned it early on, but I'm a paying 1Password customer. I've loved the product for a bunch of different reasons. It sort of takes advantage of things like autofill, all my passwords, anything I basically need anytime that's secure, notes, etc. And it's a great product. Recently, so as a result of building Zeit, which is a product that like is on a bunch of different types of computers, Mac, Windows, etc. I am constantly dog fooding all of the latest like Apple products. So I have Sequoia. I've had it for like 2-3 months, which is their new operating system update. And one day I noticed that they had a new product called Passwords, and it just showed up on my phone. It showed up on my computer. It kind of reminded me like of the iPod, where like YouTube was downloaded onto my iPod all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And anyway, I'm curious like how you think about Google, Apple, Microsoft releasing some of these features that are competitive with you guys, where we're building and I'm building companies that they're building and releasing features for. How do you think about differentiating, doing better, beating them, et cetera?
Yeah. So a few things there. First of all, there are billions of people on this planet that should be using a password manager that are not. We are in very, very early days of the appropriate hygiene. And the problem that password manager solves, both from security and a productivity perspective, is getting more significant every day. So more and more of our lives are uh, interacting digitally with the world, and it's not just passwords. It's your wife's TSA number when you're booking a flight. It's your kid's social security number. It's the image of the healthcare card that needs to get sent to your kid when they're at the doctor and they don't have it. There's all these things where the security and convenience of having sort of the digital identity stored in one place across a lot of different places and be able to securely recall it and save adjustments to that digital identity is super important. It gets more and more important every day, which is why not only for the personal use case, but the business use case, we're super excited about our future. On our consumer business, we have millions of people that use our product on the consumer side, like yourself. We have many, many, many people, probably millions, who use the word love like you used. You said, I love 1Password. I go up to, go to the airport or go to a conference. I have the 1Password badge on my shirt. I get people that pull me aside and give me 10-minute diatribes about how 1Password changed their lives or their grandmother's life, whatever. There are not any other products that actually elicit that kind of, certainly not in the security realm,
Right.
certainly not in B2B security, where the end user will go out of their way to tell somebody who they think works for the company how much they love the product. In security, it's not CrowdStrike, it's not Okta, it's not Palo Alto Networks. Nobody loves those products so much that they're pulling people aside in the airport to tell them how much they love them. So that's a really big important part of what we do. And so what we represent to the users who get it, who have gotten there, is a very differentiated experience from what you can get in your browser plugin or native at the application level. However, we as a company of our means and resource don't have the ability to move the market for millions and billions of people. The platforms do. And so when Apple comes out and says passwords are important, you should take it seriously, or Google comes out and says the same thing, it stimulates the market at large to start thinking about the proper hygiene, not to use Fluffy Cat 123 in every single one of the password fields that you come across. And ultimately, if people want to start there at the platform level, if they're a closed system on Apple, or whether they just sort of want to not use Fluffy Cat and have a couple different things they can remember and Google browser plugin, that's a great start on the journey. But people ultimately, many people realize that Google's in the business of selling ads, Apple's in the business of selling content and devices. We're in the business of being Switzerland for what you use and being your trusted partner for keeping your data privacy secure and your ability to be extraordinarily productive as you interact digitally. Very different thesis for what we try to do as a company and what platforms do with the password feature that they include in the platform. And so many people migrate from those platforms to us. Sometimes they bypass those platforms. They go right to us when they realize Fluffy Cat isn't the right way to go. But what we do find is every time one of the big platform providers makes any kind of noise, they stimulate the market demand, and the amount of traffic that comes to our website goes up, not goes down when these things happen. So we always have viewed it as a positive when those folks are going to stimulate, when the platforms stimulate awareness of the problem that we all have. And our challenge is to make sure that every day people like you continue to say, I really love this product. If we do that, if we continue to focus on the end user and making sure you love using the product and it helps your life become materially better, which we believe it does, then we're going to be fine.
I think that was a great, perfect way to say it. Like the love the product. Like so far in the very small amount of time that I've tried passwords, don't love it. And so I think it's going to be hard to keep going back. So you made a really interesting point around all of the different data points and notes and different pieces of information you can pull in. Like when I go to my daughter's dentist appointment, it's like, hey, do you have your healthcare card? And I'm like, I do, but where is it? And it's like, I'd go to my email and then my United Healthcare and blah, blah, blah. And it's like complicated. And when I actually have things in 1Password, my life seems simpler. It seems like maybe with some of the newer technologies that are kind of coming out now, like ChatGPT and AI, I'm curious, like if you're seeing, are there ways to pull that stuff in more easily? Like, could you build a tool that sucks in my inbox and just grabs all the stuff I need? How are you guys thinking about all the cool technology that's out and available?
Yeah, there's multiple AI initiatives in play for years now at the company, and many of them are focused on usability, which is an important pillar of our investment area. That lots of interesting things, and not to give the answer away, but that you'll see in the product that will be tremendously valuable for end users. It also comes into play very much in our business use case, where we sell a much broader platform effectively in the identity and access management space to business customers. And AI plays a big role there in both discovery and workflow and other areas. So yeah, I mean, AI, every company and every board for the last several years has been developing their AI strategy. How does AI, as you do, I'm sure at Zeitz as well,
Sure.
understand the points of leverage, both from an internal use perspective, manifest in the product, the way that you support customers, the way that you sell. There's all kinds of ways that the wave of AI could and should be helping companies serve their customers, better. So we're no exception to that.
And then our last question for the day. I would love to know from you, what does the future of 1Password look like, and what are you excited about?
So where 1Password started 2 decades ago was really serving the most prolific internet users of the time, that happen to be pretty technical consumers, individuals. And so the product was designed for that community with a couple things in mind: security and data privacy. And those are super important to that constituency, but also usability becomes important. And those three things are often at odds, right? So the company worked really hard to create a product that was not only the most secure and sensitive to data privacy concerns, but also the most usable. And that really allowed that sort of consumer to really embrace the platform or the product, and it spread pretty virally early on. What happened in kind of the mid-teens is a lot of those folks took the product into their workplace to cover some holes that the identity and access management solutions that they were deploying in the workplace were exposing. And so we started getting requests for administrative tools, to take our consumer product and pull it into the business use case. We actually launched our 1Password for Business in I think 2016. And so that also sort of hit a vein and started to pick up because the world was changing even at that time. But that change accelerated pretty dramatically given the pandemic, when everybody, as we mentioned before, went sort of remote, hybrid, working from everywhere. So now they're working on multiple devices as they're moving throughout the house or wherever they are. They're interchanging between their personal identity and their professional identity throughout the day as they're doing things. And they're bringing in applications from the outside, from the edge, that the company hasn't necessarily sort of asked them to use to get their job done. Over 50% of the applications the company uses are not known to the IT department, and 80% of companies have some form of BYOD policy. And so there's this outer perimeter of devices, applications, identities that exist outside of the core IT provisioned infrastructure, which was the old way of working. And so what 1Password has the opportunity to do, or what we're doing, is we launched a platform called Extended Access Management, which basically provides visibility and protection for that outer ring of applications, devices, workforms, and provides application visibility and control, policy, taking applications from the edge and moving them, lifecycle managing them over time into privilege and governance and all the things if appropriate, but also provides kind of a universal sign-on approach for both the things that are provisioned centrally and provisioned and federated behind like an SSO that you might have with an Okta or an Entra, Google Workspace even for some customers, but also then complements that with all of the outer ring of devices and applications that exist. And so that's really the future. That's the problem that we're solving, both the access trust gap. You trust that all of the identities, all of the devices, all of the applications, you have the ability to sort of get visibility to them and provide control and provisioning over time into a more governed environment. So we're super excited about extended access management. The reception has been tremendous from both customers as well as the industry analysts that we're speaking with and partners. We've announced a great partnership with CrowdStrike this week. We're working closely with them. There's a lot of the ecosystem players that recognize that the footprint that we have at the individual level, the human being that puts us on all their devices, that loves the product, that gets a tremendous amount of productivity and time back in their day, gives us a really unique vantage point, an opportunity to provide a more comprehensive security solution. And so that's the future of where the business is going. We're super excited to have the opportunity to do it.
Well, I think that wraps up our time and our questions for today. So thank you very much, David Faugno of 1Password.
Yeah, I appreciate being here and thanks for doing it.